I'm trained as a kaupapa Māori researcher, and I got, because of my age and the time when I went to university, I got to be schooled by amazing people like Leonie Pihama, Lena Smith, and it just seemed normal. It's like, well, isn't this how we all do research? Aren't we always working in a decolonial paradigm? But no, they're not. I feel really lucky that my normal was set that way 30 plus years ago when I trained as a researcher. Doing a PhD 25 years ago on a manawa heavy analysis of genetic engineering, sitting in the geology department in science trying to think kaupapa Māori and whānau feminist critique and analysis. And I raise that and bring it into the room because as we're trying to rebuild our food systems and bring a criticality to explain the multiple issues that intersect with our food, we need to put on our physical thinking skills. Whether or not that's our Indigenous hats or our hats in other places or whatever other disciplines, kaupapa Pātaka do it so well, waste is byproduct colonialism. These are the types of hats that we need to put on when we're in these struggles and these fights and with governments and the commodity food system and with the capitalist patriarchal writ large. So 19 nei pōtai, the pōtai of our ancestors who had a searing Indigenous critique, as Moana Jackson always used to remind us. Our tūpuna were researchers, they were scholars, they were orators, and they carried their critique in various ways, and lai tūmu tia a kōrero. So I run a charity trusted by Life Joy. That for me to look at that photo. It's a house burnt down last year in November. Really bad house fire. And I think a few people know about this. Nahi atu mō ngā kākano. Just received some beautiful kākano from his school across the way. One of the things we lost in our house fire was our seed bank. And for 20 plus years, we've been hosting Indigenous communities and Māori communities at the farm. And we've been sharing seeds, we've been sharing kōrero to stand up our food systems again. And so not only did we lose the house, but that whole weekend before the fire, I was sorting all the seed bank out and all of our kākano. And actually sharing this, because I think it's a good thing to share, was oiling a hui with linseed oil and the out to the table as well. I put it in the cloth in a rubbish bin overnight, spontaneously combusted. I woke up to the house full of smoke at 5 a.m. So as we are starting to reclaim our practices of hui, of growing hui, of decorating hui, of our mahi toi, that's my lesson that I'm sharing. Mahuika in Te Hilipi Te Pui, obviously we're having a good little party that I took because they came from the sun with us and our party. So we will rebuild again, but really acknowledging Rory, who's in the room here, because Rory helped us to establish these 10 mara over here probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and we learned so much along the way about growing the food, looking up to Tini Boni, our soils, our seeds, how hard it is to actually save the diverse seeds that we need in order to be able to stimulate microbiology in the soil, so that we're not buying off the commodity seeds. So, that's in, right? In rebuilding our food systems, we have to work as a community. And I love the food events I get to go to around Motu because I see people I haven't seen for years and I'm connecting the food growers again who has the always costs. I often find in this space people like dip their toes in and dip out. I think once you've been touched by seeds, fruit and soil, once you've had your hands within a hōne, and you have that beautiful opportunity to mirimiri with her. I don't know many people who leave, actually. Yeah, I think what's a bro, always a bro, eh? And there's one I said once regardless. So Papawhakaritorito Trust was set up about 4 years ago just in COVID to elevate Indigenous seed, fuel and food sovereignty. And we work with those 3 pillars. So I know this hui is about a regional kai hui, but I'm encouraging you to now put with kai seeds and soil. Because as Bandana Shiva says our food sovereignty starts in our seed sovereignty, which starts in our soil sovereignty. So that's our kaupapa and that Papawhakaritorito Trust to elevate Indigenous, because we are connected as tangata takitaki across the world with other Indigenous communities and their practices. And that's really what we want to do, is we want to twinkle, we want to connect. And I'm going to share in this pōrero today a little bit of the mahi that we do. And the findings from a 3-year research project called Pātaka Kai, which we've just published in this really beautiful book that we're so proud of. And I think there's some copies available in whakapapa for purchase. Otherwise, you can have a look on our trust website. I'm not trying to sell it to you, but I'm just saying it's profiling about 12, 13 different communities. And the 5 marae in South Auckland are all doing different initiatives around kai, seeds, or apili and bark. So, and then, you know, one of the things about research, and the government's absolutely terrible at developing policy from evidence, but as communities, we know better than that, you know. We know that we need to move forward in a collective, he waka iki moa, that we're not isolated by islands, and so actually learning from what other communities are doing, really important, or else we just keep staying in that one place and go, oh, well, what, I think I need to know this, but actually other people might have done that ahead of the hoe or that research. And right now there's a lot of Māori and Pacifica research projects. When I say a lot, not like hundreds, more like 10, which I think in an area where there was hardly anything going on in Aotearoa around Māori Pacifica people's research and with our own communities to tell our own stories. So that's why I'm highlighting this book.
And in the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm not saying that this is the work of only of us, this is connecting up across other Māori communities as well, we've seen the Māori food sovereignty movement just grow, and I'm sure you guys have seen it as well. No matter at what end it is, people are interested in growing food again, cost of living to mea. So we've got some online courses which we've just reduced the price down to $10, or for a group of 5 for $35. Had a real issue selling mātauranga Māori online, although we were really encouraged to do that. It's like, didn't feel right. So these courses are pretty much free for people. The other thing that we've just finished is filming, it's on air at the moment, is an 8-part TV series for whakata Māori called Hua rebuilding our broken food system. And we filmed one of the episodes here that I think is screening on Friday night, episode 3 at Papatūānuku Marae. And if you're wanting to learn more about Māori organics, or this beautiful kaupapa of Hua, which is what this marae uplifts these values every day, then have a watch of this series, because it's going out into the community to hear from diverse communities around how they're enacting Hua and the 6 kaupapa as well. So, that's all part of storytelling work. Lionel, this is taken at Papatūānuku Marae. This is a shot from when we filmed up here. So telling that hapū story, that community story of food sovereignty, of regenerating the reo alongside standing up our food systems as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later, because there's such an important connection there to be made to reo o te taiao and food sovereignty. And then this kaupapa really close to my heart. We had an opportunity to go to India. We asked if we could go to India and meet with Vandana Shiva. So we went to India and interviewed Vandana Shiva for episode 5 of the Hua series. And I think this is my point earlier around the work of the trust being international, is that when we can connect and hear from leaders, remarkable leaders in other parts of the world who are struggling against the capitalist patriarchy to keep their food systems in place, I know my experiences, and I see it when other people connect with international Indigenous peoples as well, it buoys us up. It's like we're not alone. We're not in this struggle. It's happening all around the world, and there's so much to learn from these other Indigenous communities. So, you know, the work that Dr. Shiva's doing around seed saving, her seed bank at Ngavdanya that she refers to as a seed temple, and it really is. The Māori, when you walk in there with all those tūpuna kākano around, is phenomenal. And the model of reciprocity of how farmers come and take seed and then have to grow it out that year and then can save a little bit for themselves, but then return that seed back into the seed bank. So it's this taututu type of economy. And so, you know, we know that capitalist patriarchy does not feed people, so we have to stand up new economies. And what we write about in this book is the economy of taututu, the economy of reciprocity upon which our food communities, our Indigenous food communities are founded. And when I come to these hui, I see that community of reciprocity because I see people like yourselves, people who I've got relationships with, but I know that we're all interconnected. And I know that why, you know, half an hour late starting, having a kai and a kōrero is the economy of taututu in action. And that's it. You know, that stuff is really, really, really important. And then one of the other things that we did late last year was Papawhakaritorito Trust. We took whānau from Papatūānuku marae with us back to India. So we invited Vandana Shiva out to Aotearoa early last year to speak at He Whenua Rongo, a national Seed, Soil and Food Sovereignty Conference, and then in return, again, reciprocity, taututu, movement building. She invited my wife and I to develop a manawahine declaration for seed and soil. So we got to have this masterclass with this incredible thinker for about 5 hours learning how to write a declaration. You know, she's so powerful with her words. And this is where I think that there's so much room for a diverse skill set in this movement that we're building around food, seed and soil. It don't have to be all the ringaropa with the blisters on your hands. There's a whole lot of roles for everybody in here. Anyway, we wrote this declaration and then she said, would you like to come to India and present it at World Food Day at Ngavdanya? It's like, kind of like when you're asked that, you just go, yes, okay. And then she says, would you like to bring a delegation? Yes, okay. So then I'm phoning, you know, the whānau here hosted her in the last day of her whenua rongo last year. And so again, it's that economy of reciprocity of us coming back to them and saying, Dr. Shiva's put a tono out for us to bring some Māori to Ngavdanya, to Dehradun, to India. Would you like to come with us? And so that was phenomenal because it was Lionel and the kids, and you know, for us, we just want to hook people on to being these activists for this generation right through into their adulthood. And I think we've hooked them. The other thing we did is we made a film, Libi Hakarai from Māori land. Te Rangi Moaho travelled with us and we cut a little short film, 10 minutes, that we premiered at Māori Land Film Festival this year called Seeds of Unity. So that shows, I suppose, well, the girls won't like this, but them kind of lighting up when they walked into the seed bank and the, oh my gosh, kākano, look at them. And watching the penny drop of like, oh, Dad, we're not doing this at Papatūānuku. We're not saving seeds like this. So there's a real wawata, a real aspiration. And I think like visibly and tangibly, they could see the importance of seed saving in their food sovereignty movement that they're doing here at Papatūānuku marae. And Lionel this morning when I turned up said, oh, fire, we still haven't done it, we still haven't done it. But it's that thing I said to him, you can't do everything, you're doing everything. And this is where we need to work as a community, because who are the seed savers? You know, where are the sakura saving seeds? Who's the seed saver in the communities that's actually doing that? So a farm or a place like this doesn't have to hold all the kaupapa. And as I know from the experience of the fire, what we lost in that was our total food resiliency, and all of our preserves were in the house, all of our home kill from the farm was in the house, all of the seeds were in the house, the whole blinking house is gone, and it all went. And So we lost our resiliency just like that. We thought we were resilient, and we were, but then a fire came and all of a sudden we weren't. But I'll tell you who came to us straight away without even asking, who just turned up, was our food farmer friends. And that's who came. Out of all of the communities we connected with, it was the food people who came, and that's very hard, that's very moving for us. You know, that's really moving for us. So on our website, this declaration, this Mana Wahine declaration for Hīnī-a-Hōni sits on there, and we're yet to kind of really do anything with it because of the fire and just being all a bit consumed with that. But this is a declaration that actually doesn't require governments or nation states to sign it off. It's about us as wahine Māori putting a po in the ground and saying enough is enough of capitalist patriarchy's extractive logic to tāhai and steal our seeds, manipulate them through genetic modification, create a patent, on-sell them then and make profit and not return any benefits back to Indigenous peoples, let alone the first point that they tāhai our seeds. So when nation states stop listening, it's still really important in our critical politics that we put a stake in the ground and say, taihoa, hang on, there's a different way of being. And what we call for in this declaration is a return to right relationship with Hīnī-a-Hōni. A little bit like what we were just talking about in climate change work, about that connection that we want people to have back again with the taiao, so they have some awareness of what's happening when they put para into the taiao and it goes up into Ranginui to mea. So that's the work of the declaration, and watch the space because hopefully, in the next few months when things slow down a bit, we'll be able to amplify that a little bit more. We also too hope to come back up to Papatūānuku in about October this year for a screening of the short film Seeds of Unity, which really profiles the whānau here and their kind of ohoaki around travelling to a place like India and going up to this amazing farm, biodiversity farm in the north of Delhi. So I'm sure we can send a pānui out as well, so people are invited, yeah. So I just wanted to, still on seeds, seem to be on seeds, but I just wanted to share a couple of these photos of some seed banks that are happening around the world with other Indigenous communities. Onondaga County in Turtle Island in America, so we're upstate New York, we're near Syracuse, and they have a seed library of over 300 varieties of tupuna corn. And when you walk into that room, the ihi and the wihi is off the hook, and I feel like weeping. You just feel like weeping. It's the mauri and the vibration that seeds carry. E kore o e ngaro e kākano I rui a mai I rangiatia. We all know that whakatauki, right? For I am not lost, I am a seed broadcast from the homelands of rangiatia. So seeds are in our whakapapa. Men and women all carry seeds, all genders carry seeds. So to actually have our relationship severed with our seeds, as people on Onondaga did, and then to have those seeds gathered back up again in one place, you can tangibly feel as Indigenous people the tangi of those seeds. Also too, some of the stories from there's an amazing woman, Angie Ferguson, this is her here, who is leading the seed work. You know, stories of like the corn braids of when Indigenous women in Turtle Island were escaping the colonists. A corn braid, they're braiding corn in their hair because they're taking the seeds with them as they're running from capitalist patriarchy. They're sewing the seeds into the hems of their skirts and their, and their tops to take their seeds with them. That's how important they are. Last year we brought this whānau over from Onondaga. They came to He Whenua Rongo and shared their pain of colonisation, their real raw, wretched pain, but also too the work of hope that they're doing in saving seeds again. Okay, that's a little bit about the trust and the diversity of the mahi that we're doing, but I just want to give you a bit of a flavour because I suppose it's a standpoint from the work that I'm going to speak a little bit about. I'll just close that window. But really I want to start from this premise about food systems and colonisation, and it comes back to that point I made earlier, no one's coming to save us. Every day we are required to eat colonisation and whiteness on our plate. Refined white food, refined white flour, refined white sugar, it just goes on and on and on. And I keep showing this slide and saying this kōrero every time I have this opportunity to kōrero te hui Māori, because we want to decolonise as Māori. We want to reclaim our reo. We're reclaiming our reo. We want to reclaim everything so we can stand and be, you know, the descendants of our tūpuna that we were born to be. So we need to do that with our food and our puku and our gut as well. So I think when we understand that actually we're eating colonisation, ingesting it, it's going into our body, it's, you know, producing the microbes in our gut bacteria that we pass on to our tamariki, and then we just, you know, we're literally perpetuating colonisation in a physical way. And that's the critique around Indigenous food sovereignty really that I want to share. So, this is one of those annoying ones. Okay, this won't be new for most of you, but this is our food system in New Zealand, completely broken. Produce enough food to feed 50 million people, can't feed 5 million in New Zealand. We export off all of our good soil microbes, all of our clean water, and, you know, we don't have food security. So 90% of the food produced from our soils is exported overseas. Not only that, we extract the water from the milk and then we send it offshore as a solid product. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. It doesn't add up. Agriculture is responsible for half of our GHG emissions. I'd say a little bit higher than that. Waterways is some of the most degraded in the developed world. So Mike Joy, people might have seen his book that's come out, one of our, I think one of our most important freshwater ecologists in the country, who's been speaking out for so long about the state of our rivers. This is all connected with our food system. I know many of you are on the front line actually feeding people, trying to get foodstuffs to people to keep families fed. But, you know, the food, this is the complexity of it. The food that actually, the cheap foodstuffs that we're feeding people is the foodstuffs that's degrading our waterways, stealing our soil microbes and our clean air from Ranginui and exporting it offshore. So, and then we import that food back in as cheap commodity foods, and then we have to share it out to communities who are in food poverty. So this is what we need to break. We can't fix that broken food system. Waihotia. You know, the capitalist patriarchy will just do what it does, and it's based on that ongoing extractive logic of capitalism. It doesn't know when to stop. So we need to just, I think, critique it, stand up these other food worlds, Indigenous foodways, which is what Indigenous communities overseas are doing, and what we're starting to do here, and what the whānau are doing here is an absolutely perfect example of it. What other depressing things have I got? Oh, our biodiversity. Our biodiversity, I mean, and just had... So not only did we lose jobs for nature funding at the end of COVID, we've now had pest-free 2050 defunded in the latest budget. I mean, it's just so depressing under this government in terms of biodiversity and the impacts on the environment. Fast tracks, you know, regulatory standards.
They're cutting staff through their retirement.
Yeah. And while we had, I'm not even going to say a good run, but there were some really good initiatives that were being funded, and we were growing kaitiaki at place in the taiao doing this mahi. So they've all now had to shift and go to look in other fields for work. So in many ways, leave that government dependency behind and let's work in stand up these other spaces and grow these other types of food systems. Oh no, there's another one. Okay, we'll just move past that one. Okay, so this is where I want to get to, and this is hope and wellbeing. This is a kaiatua model for thinking about what Māori food systems might look like. And ki uta ki tai, from mountains to sea, rangi me papa. For those of you who have literacy in whakairo, you might be able to pick out your rohi, your whakairo from your rohi in here, and contemporary and traditional food systems in there. So, you know, mahinga kai based as a form of rangatiratanga over kai, but also too, you know, Māori are big players in horticulture and kiwi fruit, for example, but also too, you know, we are reclaiming at this point traditional ways to be able to grow food. So the interest in regrown kumara, the interest in the old varieties of kumara, which I think we're going to need as we adapt to climate volatility, and not just to hold on to those seeds, but to grow them out every year so that they adapt to the climate, and then save those seeds so then you can grow them out the next year, adapting to the climate, because this is really our job. It's not really our job to be buying our seeds from Mitre 10 or the big seed merchants, which are part of that big capitalist patriarchy system around food. They're also too the pesticide, you know, the seed companies are the pesticide and chemical companies, and they're also too the life science companies that are doing genetic modification. So it's a tangly little web of that's it, of deceit. Now, sorry, I've got some postcards to I'll just pass these over to you. Could you pass those out for me? I've just bought some postcards with this image that I can share out with you, because one of the things we were really interested in understanding is, what's a Māori food system? What does it look like? I was really interested as a researcher about 4 years ago in that research project Pātaka Kai to understand what Māori food systems were, because if we say the food system's broken, then we've got to try and fix something, but we don't want to fix the broken one. We want to kind of stand up what our tūpuna had, or where we think we might have left off. And so what I can tell you is that it's diverse, that it's at place, it's located, you know, there's a tūranga waiwai connection there. Oh, there's so much to say about this. I'll just press the next slide, because I might have actually, have I got anything? Oh yes, I have, what we learnt. Okay. So if you look at that image, you know, you'll see that food is connected to wairua and whakapapa, and that's why we deliberately worked with a kaupapa Māori graphic designer to develop that image, because, and while it took 5 years to get to that, research is slow, we were in COVID, we had many iterations, but we wanted something that wasn't generic, and this is why we went off and did all this research around the different po that are in there, so that actually they did relate to different rohi around the motu. So food's connected to wairua and whakapapa. And out of all of our travels and work in food sovereignty with other Indigenous communities, food is wairua, food is spirit. And I think we forget about that when we're in food sovereignty movements, because often we're at that hard end of needing to feed people and keep people well. But food is wairua, and it is connected to whakapapa. The other thing we learnt through this research is that the intergenerational practices of tau utu utu, and I talked about that a little bit earlier, these other economies of reciprocity. So if we're collapsing capitalist patriarchy, hot composting it as fast as we can, letting it, you know, die its death, then what are we standing up? What are we standing up? Because we have to stand these systems up right now. It's not going to get better putting the Band-Aid on it. We need to stand it up right now. If we don't stand it up, our tamariki and our mukapuna are going to be going, well, what did you do? What did you do? You can speak the reo and you're great at, you know, you can speak the reo and you've reclaimed mātauranga and all of these other things, but what are we going to eat? And where are we going to get our food? It's absolutely critical. As we know in COVID, when something happens, it happens, and it happens quick like that. And so we have to be ready to respond from our own food systems. And I can see these, when we stand up our food systems, we move away from food banks needing to be stocked with commodity foods that we know is part of that complex issue of capitalist patriarchy and ongoing colonisation. everyday connection with the māra, really important for food sovereignty. We probably talked with about 12 or 14 Māori communities, and what we learned from them is you have to go out every day. It's like, even if you just walk past it, but you've got to get out there. And I know this being someone who's lived on the same piece of whenua for almost 25 years now, you have to go out and walk it every day, especially if you've got livestock. That's your responsibility to be able to do that. But, you know, that thing of saying, oh, well, what's for dinner tonight? It's not about opening the cupboard, it's about going outside and having a look at what's in the māra. And so beginning to change that mindset. And I think, you know, schools, kōhangarau, kura kaupapa are really good places to be able to do that. And then, of course, influencing policy and political settings by amplifying and elevating kaupapa Māori. It amazes me, doesn't amaze me, annoys me how we're still marginalised in food spaces. Māori, kaupapa Māori, Māori views, you know, it's a little tack on, seen it everywhere. We need to be right in the centre of it. This is our whenua in Aotearoa. These are our awa, we the kaitiaki of the taiao. So we need to be right in the centre. So, you know, there's movements like Full Circle who've wanting to develop food policy, national food policy strategies. Eat NZ, Angela Clifford, who does great work, wants to develop food policy strategies. Well, the food policy strategy on our whenua in Aotearoa needs to be generated first and foremost by us, not as a tack on from anybody else. So just kia matara, I'd really watch out for that, about where we get tacked on. Okay, and this is our lovely book. So I just want to acknowledge Johnson Witihira, who was the designer in the book and we wanted to make it really beautiful so that you don't have to read the words, but you can get heaps from all of the pictures and these aerial shots of all of the different māra throughout the motu that Māori communities are standing up. First time a Māori font has been used as well. He worked with an international font designer. So Māori font where like the ngā joins together, so you don't see the letters as being separate, so it's kind of like you'd read it as you might say it in Te Reo Māori. So we're a little bit excited about that. And then Yvonne Toda, Kairangahau Māori, who worked with us for 3 years on that project. But I just also too just want to give you a bit of a flash up some of these amazing food heroes, Māori food heroes who are working like right in the heart of community. Te Rangi Kaheki at Kai Rotorua, who's just doing beautiful stuff with Rotorua Boys High, reconnecting people back to, for him it's the kumara. He said very hard to get our people to connect to Papatūānuku through a carrot, but a kumara might be a little bit different. So this is his mahi. Jared in the far north, who's doing syntropic food farming, food forestry. So it's growing food. We've got these skills in our own communities to be able to actually do food forestry. We don't have to necessarily go and sidle up and work with Pākehā people who are doing permaculture, because we've been working with them and they've grown our skills. So we've got people in our communities who can do this, and I know there's some projects that are happening in Tāmaki with Pacifica communities in the food forestry area, which is super exciting. And Lionel will show you later that there's an example of food forestry happening just in a block up the back there. And this is the way to go. This is really food forestry, really dense and looking after the soil. Right, okay. And then Oars and Tuhiao at Parihaka. So much food. I'm like, so much food, so much kai that they're growing. They've brought the māra back to the pā at Parihaka. And part of the māra is reo rumaki anake. So, you know, not only are they growing kai, but they're whakarauora tia te reo as well. And that's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful kaupapa. So there are examples around of people from our Māori communities who are doing this work. What else is there? And so just thinking about how do we build bioregional resilient foods communities. Diversity, 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 in short. We don't have to do it all. You're good at that, you're good at that, you're good at that, you've got whenua for that, you've got knowledge in this. So we need to rebuild. It's not just the foodways, it's the reconnection of the communities that's so important. And I know you'll all know this, but we really need to think diversity, because what colonial food systems do is they just think monocultures all the time. And so, you know, we know as Māori that we're diverse in whānau, hapū and in iwi, so diversity. Grow hubs and activities, grow hua parakori and work with Te Tiriti allies. So in standing up our food systems, we don't want to duplicate what colonisation has done and continuing the poisoning of the whenua. So that's why I've put hua parakori up there, Māori organic, so that we can get poisons off the whenua. He kōrero nui te kōrero i pānanga Māori trust me te ahu whenua, you know, Māori farming trusts and the sheep and beef that's going on and the ongoing poisoning of the whenua through Roundup and this, that and the other, and spraying this, that and the other. Yeah, forestry, monocultures, all of that. So this is why I'm a real advocate. I mean, we're hua parakori verified on our farm, but why I'm a real advocate for it, because we just seem to have this love affair with sprays in this nation. And the government has just increased the level of glyphosate that can be used on the whenua in food and farming for the introduction of genetically modified organisms, which those crops need a lot of spray on them because they're monocultures. So we're going to be in a worse state under this government, of course, than what we were. But in 10, 20 years' time, in terms of GMO seeds, my heart just weeps for that. My heart weeps. We won't even go down that path. That's too. So I've probably got only a few minutes to finish up here, but I wanted to bring this kaupapa to your to your attention, I suppose. This idea of soil sovereignty, of elevating the mana of Hiniahuoni. So we often talk about food sovereignty. Oh, we're not food sovereign, we need food security. But one of the things we're doing in the Papawhakaritorito Trust is we're elevating the mana of Hiniahuoni by speaking up for the divine rights of our tūpuna, of our ancestor. Because our soils in Aotearoa and globally are so degraded, not just from sprays and pesticides, but from over-tilling, from growing in ways where we disturb the soil food web, where we damage the soil microbiology. And if we could see what was going on under the soil, we would be weeping. It is a nightmare under there. And so really, you know, this idea of joining food with soil with seed is where our conversation, I believe, as Māori needs to happen in the food sovereignty space. If we don't have soil, we're not growing anything. Yeah, if we don't have seed, we're not growing anything. So how can we elevate the mana of Hiniahuoni? And one of the things that we did probably about 4 or 5 years ago was we took that hua parakori framework of those 6 beautiful kaupapa, and we mapped out some questions that whānau Māori could think about in terms of soil health. So there's lots of ways to think about soil health in Western science frameworks and in biology-led frameworks, and they're just beautiful. But how do we come to that knowledge as Māori through our own mātauranga? So that framework is published again in that Pātaka Kai book because it's new knowledge, and we just want to keep amplifying it because we want to keep lifting up the mana of Hiniahuoni. Anyway, look, I think I've probably run out of time, but Rory, this is the result of doing biology-led work with you, my friend. But I might just leave it there. This is just a photo from the farm at Papawhakaritorito. We learnt through my partner going off to do for the Love of Bees course about the importance of polycropping, the importance or how much food you can grow in 7-metre long beds and 1 metre wide. You know, we can get 10, 15 crops down there of diversity that then in turn through the diverse root structures of different plants creates a really good soil food web without going into it too deeply. So, you know, we should be able to stand this up in every whānau's backyard. We need a kai champion in every whānau. You know, we often say in whānau and hapū o marae, oh, ko wai te kai karanga, ko wai te kai kōrero, well, ko wai te kai mahi mara. Who are the gardeners, you know, in that whānau or that hapū that can help to feed us and take take that kōrero forward. So, ka mōhio he tino tere te kōrero, e maha ngā kaupapa. So I know that was a really fast conversation or a kōrero, and that there's lots of things in there. But as you know, food is really complex. Food is really complex, and given that we're the ones that are going to have to fix it, I think it's really important that we understand the really big picture and the wide range of activities that are going on out there. So then we can kind of come in and, identify what your bit is, that you're contributing to while you have this opportunity to build relationships and to make networks with people. So hoi anō koutou, mihi atu ki a koutou, mihi atu ki te kaupapa mo te tono, ki te haramai nei tēnei rā ki te whakawhiti kōrero, mihi anō ki a koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ai.
Tūpoto tēnei, te mihi atu ki a koe, I o akoranga nui, I mauria mai kia mātou, ngā kaimahi o ērā kaupapa ki roto o tāmaki makaurau. He tūpoto tēnei engari, tēnei waiata no te taitokerau, mohia nau tēnei whaia, no hine amaru, no reira, he waiata tēnei he pānaki tērā tupuna. Anei ngā uri o hine amaru, te tupuna au e. He wahine whakaiti humari e. Hei ropi ropi tana uri a ngā mai. I hoki a ngā heke iho, ko rahiri ko hine amaru. Hine amaru, te tupuna kai a rahi, I te hapū o Ngāti hine. I roto wai o mi o ka puta mai I te kopu o te whenua he kumara. He tangata. Morira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe. Pai.
Tawhara, thank you.